Yeah, so I have loved superheroes since I was a little kid. I used to steal my brother's X-Men comics when we were growing up. And so I just loved it. I love the idea of having superpowers and that very vicarious fantasy. And a number of years ago, I started to get this idea in my head about what would happen if a supervillain were to fall in love with a superhero, and how much drama and conflict would ensue. And that just kind of started to build and build in my imagination and eventually turned into Renegades. How was the creation of Nova? She went through a lot of changes, actually. In a lot of the early drafts, Nova did not have superpowers, and she was going to be more kind of like a traditional Batman-esque character where she was a great inventor and kind of tried to turn herself into a superhero, but then was constantly rejected by the superheroes, and that's kind of what turned her villainous. It's very different now. The story has changed over many, many drafts, but I always wanted to keep that idea of her having a lot of resentment for the superhero characters and being a villain who's conflicted between wanting to bring down the renegades, but also essentially a good person with good motives. So I really needed a reason for Nova to hate the renegades. I needed something that would turn her against these superheroes, and so that kind of developed into this story in which she suffers this horrible childhood tragedy, and essentially watches as her family is murdered right before her, and she grows up blaming the superheroes who had promised to protect them and failed in that promise. And so it was really my way of establishing this hatred that she has for these superheroes, but making it hopefully in a way that readers will really be able to understand why she has so much hatred for them. So some of them just kind of come into my head, and I think that would be a really cool superpower and would be very kind of cinematographic to be able to write, and hopefully will create really awesome images in the reader's mind as they're reading. One of the biggest challenges of writing these books were trying to come up with superheroes that were a little bit unique, that maybe hadn't been done to death by Marvel and DC already. And that was something that plagued me constantly as I was writing. I would have an idea for a superpower and think, oh my gosh, that would be so cool, that's so unique and different. And then I would Google it, and nope, Marvel already has 4 of those. So that was, a struggle. But ultimately, I just settled on powers that, even if they weren't 100% original, I still tried to give my own, unique spin on them.
Right.
I do. Now, I very much feel like writing for me is sort of like I'm watching a movie play out in my mind, and I'm just trying to write it down and follow along with what's happening. And action sequences are a particular challenge, especially when you're writing scenes that have multiple characters and they all, have these different superpowers, and trying to make it all fast-paced while still, being able to put those images in the reader's mind and have them understand what's happening. It's a challenge, it takes a lot of working of those little bits and details. For me, I will often draw a diagram of the action sequence, and here's the street where this is taking place, and okay, Nova's here, and Adrian is here, and Oscar's over here, and kind of pencil my way through how are they going to move, and who's going to attack who, and what's the result of that, and try to make it work as well as I can.